You know, I never get tired, and I know I've said this before, I think fairly recently, but man, it's not until you're away from your studio that that you really miss it and just like appreciate it for what it is. It's just a magical little place, the BDSM studios. It really is. Of course, it's in the name, Brian's Dungeon of Sex and Magic, which is another. Look, I got to tell you guys. So a couple things. What I was going to finish my sentence. I'm terrible about that. That's another acronym that Sovereign Tech listeners have come up with, and I really appreciate that. I got to tell you something. So one thing, first off, is that it's so important. We're going to talk about creativity in a later question. And yes, folks, the Golden Stallion is here with you. It is your Wednesday Patreon-only Sovereign Tech Q&A, and welcome to the show. Woo, this is the greatest show. Hey, I told you I couldn't sing. Anyway, no, this is not the greatest show. Though I do have fun doing it. It's so important to have a creative space, to have a space where you can just like sit down or whatever you want to do, stand, I don't care. I used to do the show. I used to do Sovereign Tech, every episode of Sovereign Tech. I used to do standing up for 2 fucking hours. I would just, and sometimes longer, I would just stand up straight and just let it rip. And that's when I was really, like, I think the show was at its most energetic at that point, just because it kind of lends itself to being energetic in that way. But anyway, that's a long story. So as to why I no longer do that. But it's really important to have your own creative space. Whatever that, I mean, and that can look, and look, I think people's perception of just how big the BDSM studio is kind of skewed, but it's a few people have seen it, and it's not the largest thing in the world, but it's enough to, to be that creative space where I feel absolutely comfortable. I can stretch my legs and I can, and just make shit happen, and I can leave all of my, more inspirational stuff in here. And it's okay if the space doesn't, if it has a bunch of screens in it. Like I'm surrounded by screens, especially right now. Okay. I do have a second point I want to get into. I'm surrounded by screens right now because, I'm getting ready for my Dark Android workshop that's going to be at PorkFest this year. Very excited to do that, where people are going to walk away with their own tablet that is quote unquote Dark Android certified. And so I'm actually working on, getting some Nexus 7s here rebuilt or set up for such a thing. And yeah, I mean, and of course, you see the studio on the live Hangout Q&As, and there's stuff behind, there's this huge screen behind me that's like 21:9. I've got, my phone on a little stand here. I've got the big laptop here and all that. But here's an important point with creativity that I want you to really, really take to heart. And it's not my own point. Someone else said it before. Creativity does not happen while you're looking at the screen. Okay. I want you, let that sink in. Okay. If you want, it might be the most important tip on creativity of them all, is that creativity does not happen while you're looking at the screen. Honestly, creativity doesn't happen even like maybe it can happen while you're listening to an audiobook or a podcast or something, but let that sink in for you. Okay. All of my, what I consider, and I'm not going to claim that any of my ideas are good. Just kidding. Actually, I think a lot of my ideas are fucking great. I mean, I really do. I love it anyway, and I'm the one that I ultimately have to please. And of course, I'm not the only one that thinks my ideas are great. Just talk to Stephanie and Ellen; they love it, and I'm so honored by that. And nothing beats the respect of your peers, and certainly they're my peers. But my best ideas always come to me when I am not looking at a fucking computer screen, at my phone, when I'm not thinking about that, when I'm just like sitting outside, I don't know, sitting on the front porch, the back porch, or wherever I happen to be, or if I'm in my creative space and I just turn around, and this is so important. And I've taken pictures of this. I think you can see them like on Instagram or maybe even on my Twitter. I might have shared it. But I have a shelf behind me. It's just loaded with starships and Funko Pops and all this other stuff, right? But I can turn off all the screens and just stare at all those and just get wild inspiration, from everything that's behind me. And that's kind of, if you remember, right, like Sherlock Holmes only kept things that were sentimental to him or they had some kind of, meaning. And that's really what I went with, here in my creative space, is just making sure that everything in here just has some kind of meaning or sentimentality or something. And ideas can come from that, but they're not going to come from looking at the screen. Like the screen, if anything, is just going to distract the living fuck out of you. But anyway, to my first point, and I do have a second point. My first point is, build yourself a creative space of some kind if you want to be a creative. And we're going to be talking about that. That has to do with the question that we'll get probably to towards the end. The second point I want to bring up is, wow, the acronyms you guys, gals, and Z's come up with. Thank you. I am so honored. I mean, folks, you got to understand, like most of the terms I use, a lot of this, speaking of being creative, like a lot of that stuff isn't my idea. Like a lot of the terms that people, or a lot of like the names that people have come up with. I mean, Golden Stallion, I've been using that since the first episode. I came up with that. Rated R Radio Star. Well, wrestling fans know where I lifted that from. But that's one that I use. But like Savzu, Libertine Chief, I mean, like a bunch of these other names, they're all created by you, or the best, the acronym, the best. You guys come up with great acronyms, man. BDSM Studios, which again, Brian's Dungeon, Sex and Magic, best being Brian, Ellen, and Stephanie, which again, thank you for the continued feedback on that. I'm so glad that all of you really enjoy those shows. Believe me, I would love nothing more, and maybe it'll happen in the future where that could be, maybe a twice a month thing or even more regular. I would love that, because I love working with Ellen and Stephanie all the time, and we're always working on stuff together. And I hope you folks enjoyed this month's newsletter, because it's a doozy. And I don't want, well, I'll tell you, the patrons, we might be able to get it back up, thanks to Ellen working on it, and she did such phenomenal fucking work. Holy shit. I mean, just bravo. If you only knew what, the brilliance she brought to that table. Stephanie did too, actually. Like in the story where there's the smell, that was totally Stephanie's idea. I love that. Anyway, we might be able to get up to where we're doing 2 newsletters a month again, which is really what I want. So maybe we can get there, but I don't want to make any promises on that end, since we already, the three of us already have so many projects that we're working on, for Sovereign Tech in general. So anyway, I mean, and believe me, you have no idea the list. Like, you just don't. If you've been following for a while and the things I mentioned that I'm doing over time and that haven't been released, you kind of know the list, but you don't want to see the list. It's crazy. But this summer, hopefully, we can make all that happen. So, but my second point was, wow, thank you for all the. I mean, you listeners are brilliant. Like, I love it. The best BDSM Studios. I mean, all the different stuff. It's just Savzu. I think that's fantastic. So, thank you so much for that. And please don't hesitate to come up with more and send it my way. So, all right. Well, I'm not gonna. All right, I got to tell you about something here first before we get into our questions, and we've got quite a few questions that we're going to get into. Oh no, you know what? Before I talk about this. All right, I got to bring this up. If you're a patron, I hope you make excellent use of that of the community tab. And I know some of you do. That's how some of you share your stories. It's a guaranteed way for me to see something. Okay, and wow. Did the Sovereign Tech listeners and myself get a treat this week, this past week, because one of the patrons decided to share a picture of herself wearing a Sovereign Tech hoodie, and bravo, my dear. And she asked she said, please, can we get those Sovereign Tech panties finally? And this gal, she had asked for these previously, and I'm genuinely working. Speaking of projects I'm working on, I am working on that. But folks, go to the community tab if you want, if you want to have. I mean, and other people have been sharing great stuff. Of course, my co-host, other Sovereign Tech co-host, Robin, he always shares some really cool stuff on there. I mean, it's just a great way to connect with the show. So it's only for you patrons, who I consider the executive producers. But Eva, thank you. I love what I do. And Robin's like, Brian, you really do have the best listeners in the world. And I was like, yes, I most certainly do. The best and the most beautiful. I mean, it's just wonderful. So, all right. Let's all right. Here's something I got to tell you about, because this is so exciting. I might share this like on Instagram or something. You know, me taking a picture holding this up, because I can't believe this fucking exists. I don't know how the fuck I missed it. So I don't know if I mentioned this when they announced it, because I don't know if I mentioned it, but I think June 12th or something like that. I already have it pre-ordered, but they are releasing on DVD now, not on Blu-ray. If it was out on Blu-ray, I'd get the Blu-ray. But you don't need the Blu-ray for all this stuff, right? Like, I mean, I still, you know, some things I can really admit to myself, okay, Brian, you don't need to spend the extra, you know, 10, 15, 20 bucks for the fucking Blu-rays. Just rock the DVDs, right? And some things you can only get on DVD. Like, we're probably never going to, and important things, like we're never going to get D Space Nine. We have tech questions to get into, folks, don't worry. But we're never going to get D Space Nine, or probably never going to get D Space Nine on Blu-ray. We're probably not going to get Voyager on Blu-ray. So those are DVDs you're going to have to hold if you want to have, you know, physical copies. And like Sailor Moon Crystal, like I have all 3 seasons, but really, like, it's fucking anime. 720p is fucking fine. Okay. Like, it's really okay. You know, you don't have to go much higher. But anyway, on June 12th, they're going to be releasing both seasons, a complete set of Nightman, which was one of these lesser known. In fact, I'm still in awe thinking about it. I watched it back when it first came out because it was a Glenn Larson show. And Glenn Larson has created so many amazing shows that I've enjoyed over the years. You know, you think the original Battlestar Galactica, Buck Rogers in the 25th Century, Knight Rider, of course. I mean, he's just done so many. But he made a show called Nightman, which is based off of a comic book called Nightman. I think it was originally Malibu, and then it folded in with the larger universe. But anyway, this show's coming out, and I mean, it's kind of ridiculous, right? I mean. You know, it's cheesy as hell. It's got this guy who's like, you know, has this wild suit, drives around in a Plymouth Prowler back when those were a hot thing, and he plays saxophone in a nightclub, you know, by night, obviously at a nightclub, and I mean, it's pure 90s fucking cheese, but I love it. But let me tell you what, so I'm excited for that. I can't wait to get my hands on that, because I thought that show was just, I mean, I love that kind of cheesy shit, like, because they usually come up with little brilliant ideas to try, and these are where a lot of great ideas can come from as well. We're just talking about being creative. Okay, here's something where a lot of little ideas can come from. If you have to, how to put this, if you are low budget, or you know, you're trying to do certain things that if they were taken seriously would be pretty, you know, say offensive or traumatic or something like that. I don't know. Like, if you make it ridiculous and over the top, you can get away with it, right? Well, when you have low budget, and, you know, one of the great ways to overcome having a low budget is to be kind of ridiculous and over the top and whatever, you come up with a lot of little brilliant ideas of how to make something work on the screen, or potentially into audio if you need to. And I think a lot of these like really low budget cheesy shows that somehow get made and get released and somehow get 2 seasons just come up with these brilliant ideas to try and parlay something very large and very serious and all that, you know, even if it is meant to be kind of tongue-in-cheek at times. So watching these shows, I mean, I get, you know, while creativity doesn't come while you're looking at the screen, it can come after the fact, after something that you've seen on the screen and you've chewed on it, you know, and you've thought about it. And I love these kinds of shows. Nightman was one that I enjoyed, you know, I guess I was more of a teenager when that came out, because that was the later 90s. But here's something, and I don't know, I think it was when I was pre-ordering, maybe it was Nightman, and I saw this, and it finally came in. But this was released last year in 2017, and it's both seasons on a DVD set. The DVD set's only $20. I mean, you can't go wrong for that price. But it's both seasons of Super Force. Now, this is a show from 1990. It went to 1992. 44 episodes, like I said, 2 seasons. Okay, and it's all about this character named an astronaut, actually, named Zach Stone, who's played by Ken Olant. Who, if you see Ken Olant, you're like, oh yeah, I've seen that guy in a bunch of shit, right? At least if you're around my age, which now I'm 37. Jesus Christ, or Great Satan. But also Patrick McNee's in it, which is really cool. Patrick McNee, a lot of people would know from the Avengers, like the good Avengers, the original one, the British one, from way back, and Steed and Peele, right? And then let's see who else is in it. The guy that played Lamar, actually, from Revenge of the Nerds, is in it, which is really cool. G. Gordon Liddy's in it, which, if you can believe that, he plays like a major villain in it. And it's all about this guy who, I mean, it's kind of a cop show, but it takes place, ironically, in the year 2020, right? And I'm going to rewatch this whole show, and I might do like a full-on review of it on a Sovereign Tech Prime episode during a climax or something. Okay, but it takes place in 2020, which is hilarious in itself because we're only a couple of years away. And like this guy has this super suit that he modifies, and he has like this awesome motorcycle that he modifies to be like this vigilante, bringing justice to the streets and everything, in the future, of course. But the show was made in 1990, so 2020, was 30 years in the future. And it's kind of funny because, like, you watch it and, once again, you go, yeah, the future's nothing like that. And it's also hard to believe, like, that, from 1990 to 2020, like, inside of that 30 years, I mean, I know like the internet's a thing and all that, but like that show had cell phones and all that other stuff. I mean, some of the stuff was kind of on in what it could do, but it really does show you how little has actually really changed. I mean, not like how little. Yeah, everybody's got a smartphone, everybody's using apps and all that stuff, but at the end of the day, it's not like we're doing all kinds of crazy shit. The other interesting thing is that this guy, so he's an astronaut, right? The character. So he's on a Mars mission that effectively returns in 2020, which is interesting because a lot of different programs, including Musk's and others, were looking at going to Mars in 2020. That was kind of weird. But anyway, I love this little show. Pure cheese. Totally low budget, but it's just so clever, the things they try to come up with to overcome that low budget and some of the cheesiness, of what they kind of have to put on the screen. But damn, do I love this. And I can't believe I saw the set and I was like, well, yep, I'll take that. I mean, I bought it just like that. It was so hot. So anyway, wow, I've been talking for 18 minutes. We haven't even gotten to one question yet. We need to get into the question, so let's do it. So the first question actually has to do with, and someone shared this on the community tab. Like I said, that's really a great way to, and look, Patreon for me, unless Patreon boots me, which I don't think is going to happen, Patreon is like the guaranteed way that I'm going to see something, and it's the guaranteed way to share something. A lot of social media comes and goes, and I've tried building groups, and there's this problem, blah blah blah. Well, the one place you can count on is Patreon, as far as that goes. So anyway, this is shared on there, and they're pretty much asking about my thoughts. You can see it as well. That Namecheap, which I have an affiliate link with Namecheap that I need to reapply. I only took it down because I had a sponsor who did the same thing, who was also a not really a domain host, but a web host provider for Sovereign Tech for a time. And so, I took down my affiliate link for Namecheap. I need to put that back up. But anyway, Namecheap they are now offering for life, and this is apparently true for if you've already been a customer or if you become a new customer, they are going to give you the free WhoIsGuard, okay, on whatever domain you happen to buy. So they're saying privacy for free for life. That's like kind of their marketing shtick. And the question, is asked, yes, first off, yes, I do use Namecheap. Zog.email is on Namecheap. I've been using Namecheap for a long time, and I started using Namecheap because they were like one of the first companies, let alone whatever they're doing, web host or not. They were just one of the first companies to accept Bitcoin. And so I have been a loyal customer with them, and I have been always just infinitely pleased with the service that they offer. I mean, I really have been. I think they do tremendous work. I have no qualms. The only thing, I wish they didn't use Komodo for their SSL certificates, but it's fine. Like, what the hell? If you really want to, you can use a separate one anyway. I just wish the one that they didn't integrate with so much was Komodo. But you can use Let's Encrypt. You can go down the Digicert. Take your pick. Okay, you don't have to use Komodo. But for convenience, it's what they have available, and I've used it through them in the past. In fact, I just had to update my SSL certificate for Zog.email. So anyway, yeah, I do most of my I'll say most. I do most of my hosting and everything through Namecheap. I love it. It's easily my first recommendation as far as a web host goes. Now, the free WhoIsGuard, maybe you don't know what WhoIsGuard is or what that is. WhoIsGuard it's what blocks, a lot of companies from finding out, from seeing who owns a certain domain. Okay, because sometimes, people will be like, oh, well, here, and you'll start getting, mail, right? Because technically, by law, at least in the U.S., you have to provide such and so much identifying information, your address, everything else to ICANN, when you get a domain name. And because of that, that gets put on a public list, unless you pay for this WhoIsGuard through a company, which keeps you off the list. It's kind of like how with phone numbers back in the day, how if with your phone number you could pay a small fee, usually like $3 to $5 or $10 to not have your phone listed in the phone book. Same exact concept. Namecheap has always charged $3 a year for that on top of your domain name fees. And now it's totally for free. That $3 charge is gone. I think that's great. Granted, this doesn't necessarily do much for your privacy, right? If a government wants to know, or an agency wants to know, who runs this domain name or something, WhoIsGuard wouldn't have stopped them in the first place, But as far as like dealing with these annoying fucking people that'll send you mail or whatever to, and they'll give you offers. Oh, do this with your site and blah, blah, blah. Or they'll offer to buy it from you, all this different shit. It's great for blocking that. And so there's nothing, I think this is great. It's just a nice little service that Namecheap is offering. And I don't mind mentioning Namecheap on my show. They've been powering Sovereign Tech and all of my myriad other projects for a long time. So I'm happy to talk about Namecheap, as to where usually I'm very careful as to what I actually, what products and projects I'll even bring up on the show, even on a Patreon show. So, this is just a good thing. It saves you a little money. And if you want to use Namecheap, go for it. I don't know if there's any broad ramifications. This might be, I haven't looked into it that much, but there's the chance that because of like the, ICANN, like that body kind of dispersing a little bit, that maybe some of these fees, maybe they don't even need to exist anymore, and maybe WhoIsGuards can just become standard in stock. I'm not sure, but regardless, it's a great service. And I don't know, maybe just Namecheap is doing that well, because DreamHost is another popular one that I know people use, and they hadn't gotten the same offers. So maybe this is just something that Namecheap is doing, and like I said, good for them. Great. So that's all I got on that. Let's see. Well, oh boy. So the next thing, let me go to another tech question. Then maybe I'll read I'll read what I want to read here. Because we got something that's pretty heart-wrenching, frankly, and also inspiring at the same time, that I want to share with you, the Sovereign Tech patrons specifically, as executive producers, which is what I consider you. But anyway, let me read this. Let's get to another tech question here. I was re-listening to Sovereign Tech episode number 241. It was wondering if you've revisited GoTenna recently, either in your personal use or if you've read any more about them. I might be in the market for it, to keep a group connected while we're on a cruise ship using the new GoTenna mesh. It adds true mesh networking through message relay, uses different VHF band, adds optional paid SMS gateway feature. While I was looking into GoTenna, I happened to notice they've recently integrated with the Samurai mobile wallet. So as you predicted in episode 241, seems they are indeed expanding the applications of their mesh network beyond simple text messaging. Also takes some wind out of some anti-Bitcoiner sales when they worry about, but what if the zombie apocalypse happens and you can't get on the internet? Yeah, right. So that's the question there. So GoTenna is something that actually I talked about a long time ago. And I did not, I thought it was a great idea, especially in the abstract. Business model wise here, I'm going to give you a little insider info. Okay. I worked as an ad exec for Free Talk Live years ago, and I tried to get GoTenna because I was like, oh, this is exactly what our listeners need. I tried to get GoTenna on as as an advertiser for Free Talk Live. And they responded to me saying, well, we're kind of a small startup, but so we don't really have necessarily a marketing budget, but we'd love to, but you can have us on for an interview and all that, when they know that the interview is really just free advertising. And it's like, no, I'm reaching out to you for, you got to understand the relationship here. Okay. We like your product, but we want to make it worth our while, really to push it out there and to do you right. Okay, so money needs to change hands. The concept of you just coming on for an interview is just like giving you a free ad, and that's not what this relationship is about, and that was expressed explicitly in the email that I sent you previously. A lot of little companies will do this. They know the trick, that they think that they can get a free interview or something, and that way they don't have to actually buy genuine an advertising package of some kind with people. This is why I don't usually do interviews with companies. This is why I usually don't, I'm very careful what products I'm willing to talk about on the show. And the person that sent in this email, he knows the deal. He knows that. He's well aware of the fact, and makes it clear that he's not, working with them. But I know this guy anyway. So, GoTenna, I didn't like that. I didn't like that they were trying to be, honestly, pretty swarmy. That was not okay with me. Anyway, but the technology itself, I think, is fucking wonderful. I think it's great. What it can do. And yes, I do keep an eye on it. It keeps passing in my radar just because a lot of the keyword searches that I do and everything, it'll just show up and stuff no matter how hard I try to not make these kinds of things show up. And their GoTenna, GoTenna Mesh is a beautiful concept. The idea that, you create your own little internet just using these little, all they are, they're little they're not, you can't even really call them a dongle. Okay. But I'll call them a dongle that, you snap onto your backpack or something, and it's supposed to be really great for you to be able to continue to connect. You'd use the GoTenna app, and you could still communicate with somebody, say if you were, going on a mountain hike or something like that. And it's worked great for years. It's a totally solid concept of what it uses. And GoTenna Mesh is kind of taking that to the next level, where you're really creating a mesh network. I've looked into it. What I see of it, I think it looks great. I'm totally on board with that, and it's creating. Now, I don't think you can exactly like force signal through it, which that would be really nice. But for what it is, and like you said, for people that say, well, what if we don't have the internet? Well, this is the reason why we want mesh networking, is so that way if the internet, something did ever happen to it, we could continue on exchanging and interacting in the way that, we've gotten used to in the past 20 years. The fact that GoTenna can work with Bitcoin now, that's great. That's awesome integration, and that's really important. So this is a great development. I have no beef with it, with the technology. I didn't like how they were doing business years ago, but that was years ago. And, I might reach out to them again to see if they want to be a sovereign tech sponsor. And I'll be curious to see how they respond to that. But they're not a sponsor right now, but I'm happy to talk about it because I like this direction. I like what they're doing. This is one of the first real applications that's user friendly for mesh networking. So here you go. If you want a mesh networking solution, jump on it. This is one of them that's genuinely working. And the distances, again, the problem always comes down to distances, right? And the distance that they claim are okay, this isn't going to, I guess if you set these all up within a neighborhood, that could get very interesting, but it'd have to be in a condo neighborhood or something. And especially in certain areas, it's just like anything else. When you run into mountains and other things, you lose some of that distance that's available. But yeah, I'm glad GoTenna is still around. I'm glad that they're making it. I guess they've made the right calls in some ways as far as where they've been spending their money. And I think that this is a really, really cool little development. And yeah, that argument that if the internet, this is such, the people, this drives me nuts. Okay. You get so many people that are like, well, but I want, and look, I understand wanting hard copy, right? Because your cloud shit can get fucked, your hard drive can die, blah, blah, blah. Those are very real concerns, and certainly I act upon those as well. Okay, but like the concern that, this entire alternative economy, that being, blockchain tech, cryptocurrencies and all that, like, well, we don't want to trust it because it can all just, fall to shit if the internet goes down. It's like the least of your concerns. Everything is connected to the fucking internet. Everything goes down, not just cryptocurrency. If the internet dies, and with GoTenna, obviously even cryptocurrency doesn't have to, right? But if the internet dies, everything's fucked. Everything that these people think is so goddamn precious is done. Okay. Unless, we implement more of these kind of mesh networking peer-to-peer solutions, right? But that argument just doesn't hold water. Well, it's like, well, then don't use anything. Like, you better just stock up, use cash only, stock up on your fucking toilet paper and go sit in the bunker. Really, to claim that you don't trust cryptocurrency, but then you trust your credit card or you trust other things, because you say, well, what if the internet goes down and, what if all the computers die and blah, blah, blah. Well, if all the computers die, what, you're not going to get TV stations anymore. So much of this stuff has become so interconnected. Everything's just going to be fucked, if that sort of thing actually, really happened. So yeah, those arguments never meant much to me anyway, but great point, to say that this is, GoTenna Mesh is a solution to that whole, concern of, what if the internet goes down? Then what are we going to do with cryptocurrencies? Well, we'll just use them on mesh networks. So anyway, let's get down to another question here. This is a comment on, I'm guessing on episode 279 of Sovereign Tech, where I kind of lost my shit on the whole throw away your Alexas and all that stuff. And, with the concern of the woman in Seattle or in California, wherever she was, Danielle, her name was, that her and her husband were talking and Alexa recorded what they said and then sent something off to somebody in their contacts list, and that person heard their entire conversation about hardwood floors and all that. So, I got pretty hard on it, and I'm still pretty hard on it, that throw those things in the trash just like that family did, and, get rid of these things, because it's not going to lead to anything with Amazon and all the other, tech giants behind this stuff. It's not going to lead to anything good. Okay. Not to say that technology itself is inherently bad, but just with them behind it, it's going to screw you in the end. Okay. So this is in response to that. And here, I'll read it here. I bought a Tap, that being an Echo Tap, because I needed a Bluetooth speaker and wanted one to toy with making Alexa skills. Tap was designed to not always listen, but there was an update to enable it, but it drains the battery like crazy. So Stallion breaking in for a second. Yeah, so the Echo Tap is one that was meant to be kind of portable, and it's battery powered. It's not always plugged in, which is kind of the concern with the main Amazon Echo. Reading on. It also has a few other limits, like not being able to do voice messaging and calls. I just keep the always listening option off or let the battery die out. There's no way I'll ever get anything like an Echo. And then he has some comments about episode, or he has some comments about the movie Solo, but I'll save those perhaps for the Star Wars update that I'll be doing with Robin in the coming day. So anyway, yeah, I get that, and this is the thing, is that you can get limited versions of this, and this technology, the idea of even Zero UI or Voice UI and all that, with the right checks in place, shall we say, is fine. In fact, I think it's a wonderful thing. I'm happy to have the Star Trek future where where you can just talk to the computer anywhere, and this gets into ambient computing, which I have a genuine problem with. But the problem is with implementation. Okay. if you wanted to double encrypt the data, and all, and make sure that, or, blind encrypt, I guess what I want to say is double blind encrypt the data, okay, that requires all that, or, that makes use of all that, awesome. And you could say, well, but it has to keep a copy of like your, what your voice sounds like and things like this. And in that way it can react to you better. And if it needs to react to you specifically, sure. But there are very set phrases and things that you can do, that you can set that up with, which you might be familiar with Alexa or with Cortana or some of these others. And then that's all it needs. It doesn't need to record every conversation you have to make things more useful to you. And the problem really here is that data is valuable, as in it's monetized, right? And until we get to a point, I think that's part of like, when you see it in science fiction in the far future, whatever science fiction it happens to be, it doesn't necessarily have to be Star Trek, but that's the most popular example. So in Star Trek, where, there's no money, right? At least in the 24th century, in the Next Generation. And of course we know that's not exactly true, but anyway, you have different writers, different ideas, different stories, and you just bring up whatever you need for the time. But in the Federation, in the 24th century in general, it's accepted, the line from First Contact or even the first season of the Next Generation, where, we've gotten over the accumulation of things, or, we work to better ourselves, we don't have money, blah, 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 like all those quotes from Picard, right? Until we're like at that point, like until data becomes something that isn't monetizable, this is always going to be a problem. And I don't know how exactly we end up from here to there, because I'm just trying to, because I'm not necessarily saying money is bad. I'm just trying to create, my own little clique, my own little Taz or Paz little community. And whatever happens in the rest of the world, I'm not interested in being the overlord necessarily of it. Okay. So, so it's going to be what it's going to be, so I don't know how to, make that happen on a grand scale, but this is always going to be a problem as long as data is monetized. But yeah, you can get simpler versions of this tech that, that limit this ability and that limit a lot of the concerns that people rightfully have around tech giants recording and having recording and listening to you at all times, which eventually under corporatism, leads to the government knowing which government is the monopoly on force, right? So, you can do this right. And if you do it right, great, rock and roll, have a great time with it, with what you have going on. But as long as we're aware of what's going on, and I think if we do put these limitations in place, like apparently that whole story now, they're saying that it was just a tripped up, like they did somehow in what they said did activate the echo. And the echo was all over their house. Like they had echoes everywhere. And so sure, one of them was bound probably to, to hear something wrong. Regardless, like that just shouldn't happen. And I don't think you can program it out of it. Okay. Again, the problem isn't necessarily that an Alexa got tripped up. The problem isn't necessarily that the thing is always listening. The problem is that it's not that it's just always listening, but that data is always being held and can eventually be used against you, either by Amazon itself in some way. I mean, even, like personalized ads, understand that's tracking you. Okay. That's used tracking. Personalized ads are fucking evil. Okay. Like, I mean, they, if you're concerned about privacy, personalized ads should be at the top of your list of concerns. You don't want them. You don't. Because it's one of the, that's so much data being collected about you, and it's one of the ways to track you as well. It's something, personalized ads is something that the NSA and the CIA use on a daily basis, as part of their, wide nets of how they want to follow potential targets and things like this. Personalized ads are a real problem. Okay. So personalized ads in themselves are something that is against you. Okay. So, it could be Amazon doing that. It could be the government, that can use this data against you, or it could be someone personal who ends up who hears you, fucking their wife, and then, it's over and whatever. Okay. Point being is that it's because this stuff gets stored and can be transmitted and everything else. That's where it becomes a problem. I've said this so many times, but I'm going to say it one last time. A lot of the cool technologies that we've been sold over the past century, frankly, okay, in science fiction, which it's been a century, okay, it all seemed palatable and cool because, oh, yeah, it helps me out. It does this, blah, blah, blah. And usually because, like, everything, say we mentioned Knight Rider earlier, everything that Kit did, everything that was, that was really cool that you could, that Michael Knight could do on Knight Rider and all that. That was all, it wasn't all getting transmitted to some company, to some tech giant. It wasn't all getting transmitted to the government, and it wasn't going to go to anybody on accident, blah, 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 blah. Okay? It was all self-contained. And that's the thing. Like, the future we thought was going to be self-contained and we'd have ultimate control over what our technologies can do. But we don't. The tech giants and corporatism and governments have ultimate control of what our technology really does today. And that's why, this feels like the future, but it's not really the future we were promised. The future we were promised, we had control. And this tech empowered the individual, and we had ultimate say over it. And that's just not so. With everything getting stored on servers and all that stuff, I mean, that's... Well, there you have it. So anyway, let's move on from that, and let's get into another bit. So this is something, and we'll get into another question out of this because I don't want to end off really on this, but this is really important. So I want you to know, okay, I want you, the patrons, and I'm only reading this on Patreon. I am not going to read this on a Sovereign Tech Prime episode because this is not something that, I mean, there are people who I think who would do this sort of thing where they would use this kind of email to aggrandize themselves or something like that. And I have no interest in that whatsoever. This is something I asked the person if I could read this to the patrons, and I said explicitly that I would only read it to the patrons. And I want to read this to the patrons. This is sad, okay? It's sweet in a way as well, okay? But I want to read it to you because, like I said, you're the executive producers. You are so key to keeping this show running and keeping it going forward. And I want you to know what your patronage is allowing for, is creating and empowering, not for me personally, but for other listeners just like you. And this person is a patron as well. You've probably interacted. I'm going to leave his name out, but you've probably interacted with him in various social media, over Sovereign Tech stuff. If you're a heavy duty listener, okay. So I want to read this from him, and here goes, and then I'm gonna stop the recording for a few minutes, and then we'll regroup on it. Dear Brian, it is with a heavy heart that I write this email. I love Sovereign Tech and very often recommend the show to family and friends. My dad was the most recent person who I introduced to your show. He loved it, especially the Star Trek updates. You single-handedly convinced him to stick with Star Trek Discovery, and he was glad he did. Sadly, tragedy struck. My dad and mom were watching their grandchildren in Baltimore City, and at 11:30 p.m., they hailed an Uber. 20 minutes later, their lives came to a tragic end. They were going through an intersection where they had a green light, and a man ran the red light on the other side. He T-boned the car my parents were in. My dad was alive but unresponsive at the scene. My mother was alive and aware enough to identify herself and my father to the responders. They were both transported to a nearby hospital. My dad didn't make it past the ER. He died there. My mother died 20 minutes after my dad, while the doctors were desperately struggling to keep her alive. The driver at fault fled the scene and still has not been located. Brian, I'm just writing to let you know how grateful to you I am for bringing my dad and I together with Sovereign Tech. He and I didn't always see eye to eye, but your podcast made us realize that we had quite a bit in common. My dad was a man of science, tech, and ethics, just as you are. I am eternally grateful that I was able to discover this side of him before his too early departure from this world. Thank you for all that you do. So, obviously I responded to this, and wrote back to the person. And I shared this with Stephanie. I shared it with Ellen, because I mean they're all part of the team and everything, including with the Star Trek updates that apparently, or not apparently, that this gentleman's father really enjoyed. What do you? I mean, when I read this, I mean, I was in absolute tears. But I am so honored. I am so saddened, of course, and I already told this person all this. Just how sad, and how my heart goes out to them. I am so honored that anything I do can, cause a family to reunite, or just to cause two people, whatever their relationship, to unite and to come together and to be able to converse and in this case reconnect. I had no words when I read it, and I don't exactly have words now, but I wanted to share this with you, the patrons, specifically, because these kinds of connections or reconnections, be proud, okay? Because you have enabled this as well, you as patrons, for that to happen. And also, I'm sure I can speak for all of you when, I'm sure all of your hearts go out to this listener as well. It's tragic. The English language sucks. Tragic is hardly enough word, a strong enough word, for what this must be like. But again, thank you for telling me, for sharing this with me, listener. And I am so honored to have had any small part in giving you a relationship with your father later in life, and or a deeper relationship anyway with your father later in life, and a beneficial one. So yeah, what greater compliment can a person that just puts himself out there, which is what I am, can you get? And that's so powerful, and that's so inspiring to me, as much as it is sad. So thank you. Thank you for what you do, listener. Thank you. And again, my heart absolutely goes out to you, and I will always think about this every time I'm behind this microphone, So, and patrons, thank you as well. Like I said, you help make these kinds of things possible. So, anyway, okay. Let's get into our last bit here. Okay, so pause for a few minutes there, but the magic of editing, I am back, and let's get into our last question. Like I said, I don't want to end on that. So let's read it here. Hey Stallion, I'm planning on starting a podcast or maybe even a YouTube show in the very near future, and just in preparation of material and to keep on top of news and sources for said material, I found it to be a real challenge, especially since I also work a full-time job. I guess I'm wondering how you get so much done. Do you just have that much free time, or do you have any tips or tricks? Okay, so first myth to get out of the way. No, I don't have that kind of free time. I effectively work full-time, if not more than full-time, as well. Okay. So, don't think that it's just because, I've got the time to do it. I guess in a way, because I get to work from home, I have a little more freedom and can maybe squeeze things in between the moments from time to time. But yeah, no, I don't have the time in a very real way. Okay. Because Sovereign Tech makes money. We have sponsors, we have you, the patrons, and all that in a very real way. Sovereign Tech is, I mean, it's a whole other job. And so like I'm working harder now than I ever have in my life. I mean, like really. And that's not to say I haven't worked hard before. I work my ass off. I have an ethic, not to pat myself on the back, but I've got a work ethic like you wouldn't believe. And I'll do whatever it takes, to make, to get stuff done and to do what I got to do, to keep afloat and do whatever else. So understand, I totally get, the idea of working a full-time job and still trying, to do, or, to make a podcast or something like that. But, that said, do I have any tips and tricks on how to like get all this done and everything? Well, we talked earlier, the importance of having like a creative space where the things like, say, a YouTube or a podcast like show, where you want to do it, having its own space makes it easier to get into the headspace, to get it in your head and to get in the right mindset that, okay, this is what I'm going to work on, because you got to kill off the distractions. Otherwise, you'll never get anything done. You have to eliminate the distractions. And, that includes social media, all that other bullshit, unless somehow your show is, based around social media. But I don't know. Anyway, like you didn't mention what your show is about, so I can't really, help you on that end. But yeah, you got to get rid of the distractions, and I don't know if you're using a Windows computer, put on that focus assist, even though that it still alerts you when just that little, that little box in the bottom right is filled in white instead of clear. It still effectively acts like a notification. Is going to constantly bother you. Like, whoa, what the hell is that? Right. So that's a pain in the ass. But so there's that, having the creative space. And like I said, to think of things, creativity doesn't happen while you're looking at the screen. It just doesn't. Like I said earlier, but the real thing that you can do, or I guess the real tip that I have is that, look, you're not going to, well, two things. You're not always going to feel like doing your podcast. You're not always going to feel like, honestly, a lot of people, and, can really relate to this, I'm sure. You're not always going to feel like doing the work that you have to do, to get paid and to stay afloat, right? But the thing is what, so both of these kind of play off of each other. Okay. These are really like the only couple tips I think that I can think of. All right. As far as like how to actually get stuff done, is that in the moments, the spare moments that you have, okay, you need to do something. All right. Whatever it is, you might not feel like maybe you don't feel like doing, I don't know, if you work from home or whatever you do. If you don't feel like doing the work that pays the bills, well, then do something that's related to the podcast. Okay. If you don't feel like doing something related to the podcast, well, then do something that, maybe pays the bills, or do something that's like a side project. But you got to do something. Okay. That's the point. No matter what it is, get used to working on projects. Someone said to me I think it was on Twitter once at some point, and they made the comment, talking to me saying, you're doing, he said to me pretty much, you're doing okay. You produce more than you consume. And that really struck me. I was like, wow, yeah, that's a hell of a way to think about it. And that's it, is that you've got to be willing to, or, get that mindset going for you, is that you want to produce more, as in a podcast, a YouTube show, whatever. You want to produce more than you actually consume. Okay. And yes, that's exactly how I act, or how my life is right now. I'm definitely producing more things, more entertainment and media than I am consuming. Certainly it hasn't always been that way in my life, because I've consumed a shit ton of media and entertainment. Okay. But, me as an entertainer, and I think really at the end of the day, that's really what I am. I mean, it's informative entertainment, but I'm effectively an entertainer. Yeah, I mean, that's become, ever since I heard that, and I think I was already feeling it innately, or intrinsically, but as soon as I heard it, I was like, yeah, that's a little rule I'm going to go by. I'm going to make sure that I'm always producing more than I consume. And sometimes I'm producing while I'm consuming at the same time, that I certainly do that, here and there. But yeah, you've got to do something. that is, especially, I mean, you're creative. When you're making podcasts or YouTube shows, whatever you're creating, you've got to keep creating. You have to keep creating. You've got to get in the habit of creating and get used to doing that. And then what'll happen is you'll start filling in every free moment you have with the creative process, with creating, whatever that ends up looking like. It's so key. But you've just got to do something. Okay? And get it out of your head. If you feel guilty that you're not working on the stuff that makes you money, if you feel guilty that you're not working on the podcast, whatever, get it out of your head. You just got to do something. Okay, do something other than consume. Okay? And honestly, going out for a fucking hike, to some trail or mountain or something, especially if you're a creative, I mean, that's important. Go do that. Go ahead and try not to feel bad about it. Don't let the pressure kill you. The only pressure you should have is, I have to create. I mean, that's how I feel about it, right? Is that I feel like if I'm not creating, I'm dying. Like that's really that's the point I've gotten to. Okay. Just like similarly with workouts. I mean, this is the mindset, and eventually I call it breaking, where your mind eventually breaks, right? Where I want to spend like the moments I'm not working out. Like if you want to, say you want to, I don't know, become a bodybuilder, or you want to get what you consider an impressive physique, and everything's subjective. Okay. You've got to get to the point where you want to spend more time working out than not. Just like for creating, if you're making a show of some kind, whatever, if you're a writer even, I mean, this works for anything, not just podcasts or YouTube shows. You've got to get to the point where the thing you really want to be doing is the creative process. You want to be engaged in that more so than anything. And then what you're going to start doing is every free second you've got. Okay. And yes, you take a break and you consume shit, and, you get yourself entertained and everything. I do that too. I'm not saying you become just like this machine or something, but every like free second you have, all you can think about is, okay, what can I make now? What can I make now? I mean, that's how I get so much done, is that in the little moments, in the cracks of time, I am filling it in with, okay, I'll start writing this story. Okay. I'll keep working on this script. Okay. I'll, whatever, or, all right, I'll work on my game for a little while. Whatever it is that, like, but you got to be willing to fill in that time and not have those moments where, I mean, it's good to be bored, because bored is where, again, that kind of fits in with, well, boredom is such a funny term. It's good to do nothing as well. Okay. Again, all of this is very fine lines and up to, a person's own tolerances. Okay. But I guess what I'm saying is that people have moments where they will spend an hour just thinking what to do. Not an hour doing nothing where, again, they could be, thinking creatively or just relaxing. It's an hour where they're just figuring out, oh, do I really want to do this? Do I really want to do that? You got to kill those hours that are like that. That's the point I'm trying to make. Okay. Is you got to get rid of those hours and just do something. Whatever it is the lesser of the evils in your mind that you want to get done, just do it. Like otherwise, I mean, that's how even if you're working full time, whatever, trust me, you can do all the same shit that I do. Okay. Like the amount. I don't think too many people can do what I do, but you get my point, is that you can do the amount and you can get as much done. Okay. And you can, and if you have to consume, like if you have to read news stories, I read news stories. If you have to read news stories, yeah, I mean, that's part of it too. But then, okay, like what can I do right now? All right, maybe I'll do some searches, to find a subject for my show. And then you fill in that time with that. But you've got to you got to become decisive. You've got to get rid of those minutes, hours, whatever in the day where you're just sitting there locked and like just frozen, not sure what to do. You got to just do something. Do not waste that time. Okay. Unless you are, like I said, unless you're actively choosing to do nothing, because that's okay. Because I mean, beautiful things happen when you're quote unquote bored or when you're not doing anything. Really beautiful things can happen then. All right. But that's what it takes. That's how I get so much done, is that I just tell myself, no matter what's going on, whatever mood I'm in, whatever, I just say, I got to do something, and I just do something. I mean, it could be anything. Hell, I could be encoding music and uploading it, to my NAS or something like that, because I have such a massive library that I'm still going through, it could be something like that, but you just got to get used to just doing something. Unless, like I said, you want to actively choose to do nothing, which I do that as well. There's times where I say, okay, no, I'm going to stop. I'm going to go sit on the front porch with a cup of tea, and I'm just going to, I'm going to sit there for a little while. And that, that's completely valid. Okay. And that you got to reset your brain. You don't want to be constantly just like feeding your brain and overstimulating yourself or anything like that. You don't want to do that either. Okay. But I hope that makes sense as far as like how I get so much done. Granted, it helps now too, that I have people helping me, which is really nice. But, I for 6 years, I've been doing all this more or less on my own. And I've gotten a lot done, but that's how you do it. Okay. That's how you make it happen. And it's really, really helpful. I mean, something else to consider too, like just to get inspired, it's really helpful. Sometimes it's just is buying new tech, buying new kit. Like get a new computer. Like getting a new computer is always so inspiring. You start loading it up and everything, and then you just want to put it through the paces. That can actually help out with the creative process. Hell, even getting a new phone. I don't know, whatever. Like getting some new kit can actually be really, really inspiring and can help you like get stuff done. And it gives you because you can clutter up a computer as much as you can clutter up space, as much as you can clutter up a house. And then, you have all the kind of the mental, the underlying mental tension that comes with clutter. Okay, I mean, that can happen in your digital life too. And so, declutter all that. That's another option that you can run with. So these are, those are the tips and tricks that I have as far as how to make it happen. And like we were talking about earlier, get that creative space made. Okay, where you have that set space where you are going to, kill it, where you are going to be, a creative motherfucker. Okay, like have that, right? And get rid of those times of indecision. You've got to get rid of those times of indecision because that's where most people waste their lives. If you could count, if we could somehow get a metric or a statistic on moments of indecision, I guarantee you it would take more of your life than red lights. Guaranteed. And eliminate that now. And just do something. Even if you don't think it's going to bear fruit. Even if you think it's something stupid to do, here's the thing, is you're going to get used to doing something, and you're going to get in the habit of doing something, just like working out. It takes a while, but you don't want to do it every day. Oh, no, I don't feel like working out right now. Oh, I don't feel like working out right now. Until, honestly, when you start to see the results, that's when your mind breaks, and that's when suddenly, no, I want to be creative all the time, or no, I want to be working out all the time. Oh yeah, I want to keep going. I want to keep building. I mean, it sucks because you got to wait till you see the results of it, right? Of what you've created and what you've built up for yourself. But once it's there, you can't stop. And that's when it's beautiful. That's when it becomes habit, right? That's when you get flow. That's when you can get into the more comfortable process of it, and you can be comfortable with yourself and what you do. And that's when you really start to love it too. So, anyway, I hope that makes sense. Okay, let's end this off. Actually, I'm going to end it off with talking about, we got our album of the week that we got to do for every Sovereign Tech Wednesday Q&A. And the album of the week this week is from a band I've been a fan of for a long, long time, probably, over 10 years now. And the band is Lordi, Lordi. A lot of people might remember, I think the album was Apocalypse or something, I think it was Apocalypse. They've had so many albums over the years, where they had the song Hard Rock Hallelujah, which was fantastic. Or their previous album had The Devil is a Loser and He's My Bitch. That song's hilarious. And their previous album, they had the classic Slaughter He-Man. It was Masters of the Universe, right? Was the title of it, but Let's Go Slaughter He-Man. It was so fantastic. So they had a new album out called Sexorcism. And if you know Lordi, you get it. Like they have a very set style. They're kind of a mixture. They're like Gwar in a way, but even cheesier and a little more melodic than Gwar. I love Gwar, but yeah, they're kind of a Gwar style thing. They when they get on stage, they have all their outfits and makeup and everything. But Sexorcism, love it. Right from the first song, the first song it's Sexorcism, but it's just like kind of a. Well, it's a longer song, but yeah, I like Sexorcism. Your Tongue's Got the Cat, Romeo ate Juliet, The Beast Is Yet to Come. You can get it just from the titles. I mean, this shit's so cheesy and wonderful, though. So I've dug this album a lot. So Lordi, Sexorcism, it just came out. It just came out like last week. So give that a listen. And if you haven't checked out their previous stuff, oh, you got to hit that shit. Lordi's got some brilliant songs. Usually their openers are pretty brilliant, but they've had some great stuff over the years. So anyway, okay, that's it. There's your album of the week. There is your Sovereign Tech Wednesday Patreon only Q&A. May is almost up. You still have your Star Wars update to come out, and that will come out on the last day of May. And then June hits, and we've got all kinds of wild shit to come out. So anyway, I'll wrap that up. I will see all of you on the other side.